Quick live. New South Wales is just about to pass hate speech laws. Let me just make sure this is working. Okay, we're good. All right, so a few minutes behind.
Okay. Madam Speaker, I move that a bill be introduced for an act to amend the Crimes Act 1900 in relation to offences about displaying Nazi symbols on near synagogues, Jewish schools and the Sydney Jewish Museum, and in relation to Nazi symbol graffiti, to amend the Crime Sentencing Procedure Act 1999 to provide for matters relating to when unlawful conduct motivated by hate or prejudice will aggravate a sentence, and to amend the Graffiti Control Act 2008 to add the circumstance of aggravation in relation to offences committed in relation to graffiti on places of worship.
I'll just check with the clerk. Is this?
Do you think this is going to wake up some normies when they get arrested? Probably not.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Hey everyone, it's your favourite Lebanese Australian
Bring up the
activist,
bill in
Anthony
electronic
Kalouf.
copy, which has been provided to the clerk, and move that the bill be now read a second time.
Fucking Avi.
I call.
Great hit piece, Avi.
the-
How come you haven't spoken about the hate speech
Thank
laws?
you, Madam Speaker.
Oh yeah, because your side is the one that's pushing
Madam
them.
Speaker, the government is pleased to introduce the Crimes Legislation Amendment, Racial and Religious Hatred Bill 2025. The bill responds to the numerous recent and shameful incidents of anti-Semitic graffiti, including on or near synagogues and Jewish schools, and other criminal acts of anti-Semitism in our state. This conduct is abhorrent and not welcome in our community. Our government is taking strong action to make sure that our laws address graffiti on places of worship, the display of Nazi symbols on or near places of importance to our Jewish community, and offences motivated by hatred with the seriousness they deserve. Section 93, capital Z, capital A, which I'll just refer to as 93ZA of the Crimes Act 1900, already makes it an offence to knowingly display by public act and without a reasonable excuse a Nazi symbol. When the offence is committed by an individual, the offence is punishable by a fine of up to 100 penalty units or up to 12 months in imprisonment or both. The proposed amendments in the bill seek to strengthen 93ZA of the Crimes Act by introducing an aggravated version of the offence with a higher maximum penalty. The aggravated version of the offence will apply when a Nazi symbol is displayed on or near a synagogue, a Jewish school, or the Sydney Jewish Museum. This aggravated offence recognises that the display of a Nazi symbol on or near these types of premises is distinctly violent, threatening and offensive to our Jewish community. In addition, the bill will clarify that a public act in Section 93Z of the Crimes Act 1900 includes graffiti, to put beyond any doubt that Section 93ZA of the Crimes Act 1900 applies to any Nazi symbol graffiti. This will also make it clear that 93Z applies to graffiti.
Hey Jerry, if you want me to respond to your question, you got to send me a $100 super chat and I'll respond.
When the other elements of that offence are also made out. The bill will introduce an amendment to Section 21 capital A2H of the Crimes Sentencing Procedure Act 1999 to ensure that when a crime is partially or wholly motivated by hate or prejudice against a group of people to which the victim belongs, that motivation is an aggravating factor to be taken into account when determining an offender's sentence. The hate-based or prejudicial motivations that may be taken into account include, but are not limited to, religion, racial or ethnic origin, language, gender identity, sexual orientation.
Queen B, there's probably no echo because I just checked. It sounds fine.
age, or having particular variations of sex characteristics or a particular disability. This means that a sentencing court must consider this motivation when sentencing. Currently, the legislation is unclear about whether the offence must be entirely motivated by hate or prejudice. The proposed amendment in the bill puts beyond doubt that an offence will be aggravated where it can be proved beyond reasonable doubt that hatred or prejudice is one of the offender's motivations. The bill will also increase graffiti protections for all places of worship by amending the Graffiti Control Act 2008 to provide that when a person graffitis on a place of worship, this will be considered a circumstance of aggravation. This amendment means that a sentence of imprisonment will be available in some circumstances for offences involving graffiti on places of worship, regardless of the manner in which the graffiti is applied. I turn now, Madam Speaker, to the detail of the bill. Schedule 1 of the bill amends the Crimes Act 1900. Item 1 of Schedule 1 clarifies that a public act, as defined in Section 93Z5 of the Crimes Act 1900, includes graffiti. The current offence of displaying Nazi symbols, Section 93ZA of the Crimes Act, relies on the definition of public act in Section 93Z5 of the Crimes Act 1900. That is, the same definition that applies to the offence of publicly threatening or inciting violence on the grounds of race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, or intersex or HIV/AIDS status in Section 93Z. Currently, public act, for the purposes of the threatening or inciting to violence offence in 93Z and the public display of a Nazi symbol offence in 93ZA, is defined as including any form of communication to the public, including speaking, writing, displaying notices, playing of recorded material, broadcasting and communicating through social media or other electronic methods. This amendment will put beyond doubt that graffiti is also considered a public act for the purposes of these offences. Item 2 of Schedule 1 introduces a new offence at Section 93ZA, in brackets 1, capital A, of the Crimes Act 1900 to prohibit a person from knowingly displaying by public act and without reasonable excuse a Nazi symbol on or near a synagogue, Jewish school, or the Sydney Jewish Museum. This offence is punishable by a fine of up to 200 penalty units or 2 years imprisonment or both for an individual, and a fine of up to 1,000 penalty units for a corporation. This is a doubling of the maximum penalty already available for the existing offence of display of a Nazi symbol. Item 3 of Schedule 1 amends Section 93ZA1 of the Crimes Act 1900 to clarify the existing less serious offence does not apply to displaying a Nazi symbol on or near a synagogue, a Jewish school, or the Sydney Jewish Museum, ensuring the more serious offence is charged in these instances. Item 5 defines Jewish school to mean a Hebrew school, an independent Jewish school, or a yeshiva. The offence will apply to infant, primary, and high schools that are Jewish schools. Item 6 of Schedule 1 provides that a statutory review of all of the amendments contained in the bill is to be undertaken as soon as possible after the period of 2 years from the commencement of the amendments to ensure they are operating as intended. A review period of less than 2 years would not allow sufficient time to properly consider how these particular amendments have been operating. Schedule 2 of the bill amends the Crimes Sentencing Procedure Act 1999. Item 1 of Schedule 2 amends the Crimes Sentencing Procedure Act 1999 to put beyond doubt that the aggravating factor at Section 21A2H, which applies when an offence was motivated by hatred for or prejudice against a group of people to which the victim belonged, applies whether the offence was wholly or partially motivated by hatred or prejudice. This means that it does not need to be shown beyond reasonable doubt that the person's motivation was wholly driven by hate.
What? So if you don't intend to be motivated by hate, but it's just how they, like the judge of the day just decides to assess the situation, it's like, okay. I swear everything's going to be illegal in this country soon. Oh my God.
Was one motivating factor. Where that was one motivating factor, the provision will apply. Item 2 of Schedule 2 contains savings and transitional provisions. It provides that the amended section 21A2H of the Crime Sentencing Procedure Act will apply in relation to an offence committed or to proceedings commenced before or after the amendment comes into force. Finally, Schedule 3 of the bill amends the Graffiti Control Act 2008. Item 1 of Schedule 3 omits Section 4, subsection 3 of the Graffiti Control Act 2008, which defines the current circumstances of aggravation for the offence at Section 4 of that Act. This is an editorial change as the bill moves the definitions to Section 4, subsection 6. Item 2 of Schedule 3 amends the Graffiti Control Act 2008 to provide a new circumstance of aggravation for the offence of intentionally marking premises or property of another person without consent and without reasonable excuse provided for at Section 4 of that Act, which will apply when the premises or property that was marked as a place of worship. The maximum penalty for an offence against Section 4 of the Graffiti Control Act is a fine of up to 4 penalty units or a fine of up to 20 penalty units or imprisonment for 12 months if the offence is committed in a circumstance of aggravation. Currently, there are 2 circumstances of aggravation: where premises or property is marked using a graffiti implement, such as spray paint, or where the premise or property is marked in such a manner that the mark is not readily removable by wiping or water and detergent. This amendment will mean that where a person intentionally marks a place of worship, the higher maximum penalty will apply in certain circumstances.
Wow, they're really being like overly policing of the graffiti. If your tag can be wiped off with a cloth and some soap, it's okay. But if it's like a proper, can of spray paint, and it requires to be painted over, nah, penalty units, nah, you're going to jail. By the way, unless someone can find it for me, I'm currently on the Parliament website. I've checked current bills before Parliament. I've sorted it by new bills, Legislative Assembly and Council. Can't see it yet, so it's not uploaded yet. But once it's available, we'll go through it.
Regardless of what was used to mark the graffiti. I also note that for the serious examples of graffiti that may cause damage to a property, an offence of damaging property under Section 195 1A of the Crimes Act 1900 could also apply, which carries a maximum penalty of imprisonment of 5 years. Item 3 of Schedule 3 contains savings and transitional provisions. It provides that the new circumstance of aggravation applies to an offence committed after the commencement of the amendment. Can I conclude, Madam Speaker, by thanking the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies, the Special Envoy to Combat Anti-Semitism, as well as the various New South Wales government agencies for considering the bill and providing valuable feedback.
Wow, so he reads all the penalty units and then he goes on to thank the Jewish community for their endorsement of the bill. Interesting.
This bill is one part of a suite of reforms that our government is introducing to tackle anti-Semitism in our state, protect places of worship and stand against hatred and prejudice. So, Madam Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.
Where did Chris Minns go?
Member for
hiding.
Wallondilly.
I move that this debate now be adjourned.
The question is that this debate be now adjourned. All of those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I ask that you fix the resumption of this debate as an order of the day for a future day.
I fix the resumption of this debate as an order of the day for a future day. The clerk will now read the next item of business.
Crimes Amendment, Places of Worship Bill, Introduction and Second Reading.
So I was watching this before the recess at 2:00, I think it was. They've split this into like 3 different bills. And from an article that I read, I think this is all to be amending the New South Wales Crimes Act. Again, like I said before, the details aren't uploaded and available just yet. So once they're uploaded and available, we'll go through them, probably not on live, but probably over the next couple of days. And then once we've got a much more thorough understanding of how they're going to police this, what the penalty units are, what the legislation actually says, how we can make submissions, public submissions. Hopefully, this is open to public submissions, and how we can see if we can, I don't know, stop it, make some amendments to it. But I don't know. But once all this becomes available, we'll go through it as quick as possible and then get that info out to you.
I call the Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, I move that a bill be introduced for an act to amend the Crimes Act 1900 to provide for offences in relation to persons blocking, impeding, hindering, or taking certain other actions in relation to persons accessing or leaving places of worship, and to amend the Law Enforcement Powers and Responsibilities Act 2002 to authorise police officers to issue move-on directions in relation to apparently genuine demonstrations, protests and processions or organised assemblies occurring in or near the places of worship.
Question is that this bill be now introduced. All of those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I bring up the bill, an electronic copy of which has been provided to the clerk, and move that this bill be now read a second time.
Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, the New South Wales Government is pleased to introduce the Crimes Amendment Places of Worship Bill 2025. On 8 December 2024, our government announced that we would consider law reform to address activities outside places of worship that aim to intimidate people trying to attend those places to express their faith, or that prevent people from practicing their faith in New South Wales. Recently, we've seen disgraceful acts targeting synagogues in New South Wales and other Australian jurisdictions, including an arson attack on the Adass Israel Synagogue in Melbourne on 6 December 2024, and the vandalism of synagogues in Newtown and Allawah, along with an alleged attempt to set fire to Newtown Synagogue in January of this year. Targeting places where people congregate to share and express their faith is unacceptable, and the overwhelming majority of people in New South Wales reject this type of appalling behaviour. There is a clear need to ensure that people of all faiths are able to practice their religion freely and without fear of intimidation or harassment. All faiths, Madam Speaker. The Crimes Amendment Places of Worship Bill 2025 will amend the Crimes Act 1900 to create two new offences that capture intentional acts that seek to impede people from accessing or leaving places of worship, as well as conduct that intimidates, harasses or threatens people who are attempting to access or leave a place of worship. Both offences will carry a maximum penalty of a fine of up to $22,000, in imprisonment for 2 years, or both. This bill also amends the Law Enforcement Powers and Responsibilities Act 2002 to create an exception to existing limitations on the exercise of move-on powers by New South Wales police officers, so that such powers may be exercised in relation to demonstrations, protests, processions or assemblies outside places of worship in appropriate circumstances. I want to stress that this bill will not prohibit or restrict lawful, peaceful protests outside places of worship. Our government recognises the need to introduce carefully thought out and balanced legislation, particularly when that legislation sits at the intersection of key civil and political rights under Australian and international human rights law. The Australian Constitution recognises the importance of freedom of political communication. Additionally, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and the right to peaceful assembly are protected by Articles 18, 19 and 21 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, or the ICCPR, to which Australia is a party. However, these rights are not absolute. The preamble to the ICCPR recognises that civil and political freedom can only be achieved if conditions are created which allow everyone to enjoy their civil and political rights. It also recognises the duty of individuals to strive for the promotion and observance of rights recognised by the ICCPR. In fact, the ICCPR recognises that freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and the right to peaceful assembly can all be limited, provided those limitations are prescribed by law and are necessary to protect matters such as public safety, order, or the rights and freedoms of others. As is frequently stated, in the context of proposed reforms with the potential to impact on civil and political rights, it is necessary for such legislation to strike a balance that maximises everyone's enjoyment of civil and political freedoms, even if that balance results in the diminution of a specific freedom. While this bill may limit freedom of expression in some cases, it does so in a way that is proportionate and justified to facilitate the exercise of the right to freedom of religion or belief and the right to manifest that freedom in a place of worship. The government is confident that the amendments proposed by this bill strike the right balance. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all stakeholders who provided valuable feedback to the New South Wales Government on this bill, including the Faith Affairs Council, the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies, the Special Envoy to Combat Anti-Semitism, and the LGBTQI+ Advisory Council, and I should say the member for Sydney as well. I now turn to the detail of the bill. Item 2 of Schedule 1 inserts a new Section 21 capital B into the Crimes Act 1900, which creates 2 new offences. Pursuant to proposed Section 21B1A, a person in or near a place of worship must not, without reasonable excuse, intentionally block, impede or hinder a person from accessing or leaving or attempting to access or leave the place of worship. The conduct must be intentional before the offence is made out. For example, a large lawful protest that is wholly unrelated to a place of worship or the religion practiced there may, due to its vicinity, incidentally impede people from accessing the place of worship. The offence is not intended to apply in such circumstances. The reasonable excuse element has been included in the offence in recognition that there may be scenarios in which a person will intentionally block access to a place of worship but does so with a valid reason. For example, a person undertaking maintenance or construction work outside or near a place of worship might...
Bro, all those protesters are going to start putting high-vis jackets on and pretending to be construction workers. What are we doing here?
Intentionally block access. Events that require street closures, such as street markets or the city to surf, may also intentionally block access to a place of worship. Pursuant to proposed Section 21B1B, a person in or near a place of worship must not harass, intimidate, or threaten a person accessing or leaving or attempting to access or leave a place of worship. Unlike the first offence, this offence does not include a reasonable excuse element. It is never reasonable to harass, intimidate, or threaten a person, especially when they are trying to practice their faith. The offences apply when a person is in or near a place of worship. The proximity measure of in or near is consistent with Section 21 capital A of the Crimes Act, part of which prohibits remaining on or near a major facility and engaging in specified conduct. Section 21(4)A is enforced and regularly prosecuted, so there is an appropriate proximity measure to use for the offences in this bill. Places of worship is defined as a building or other structure ordinarily used for worship, including churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples. The definition of place of worship is not intended to capture places such as prayer rooms, multi-faith rooms, and chapels within other buildings such as hospital, airports, or office blocks. It is intended to capture places that are ordinarily used by religious denominations for the purposes of worship. Some premises that are not dedicated places of worship may be used regularly for the purposes of worship. Whether or not this type of premises would be considered to be ordinarily used for the purposes of worship will depend on the specific circumstance of the use of the premises, including how frequently the premises is used for the purposes of worship and how long the premises has been used for the purposes of worship. The maximum penalty for both offences is a fine of up to $22,000 or imprisonment for 2 years or both. The new offence in relation to blocking, impeding or hindering people accessing or leaving a place of worship will not apply if the person's conduct forms part of an industrial action, dispute or campaign, or the person's conduct occurs at or outside Parliament House or an office of a Member of Parliament, or the person's conduct is in accordance with the consent or authority of the Commissioner of Police or the person apparently in charge of the place of worship.
So if it's industrial action, it's okay. So CFMEU is okay.
The proposed offences do not make it a crime simply to protest or hold a civil assembly near places of worship, and the exclusions relating to Parliament and industrial action make it abundantly clear that this is not the intention of the bill to criminalise gatherings that impede access to places of worship by their mere vicinity. Importantly, the bill makes it clear that the offence of intentionally blocking, impeding or hindering access to a place of worship is subject to 24 of the summary, sections 20, is subject to Section 24 of the Summary Offences Act 1988. The Summary Offences Act 1988 creates a framework under which protest organisers can seek authorisation to hold a public assembly. While there is nothing inherently unlawful about unauthorised public assemblies, participants in an authorised public assembly are protected from prosecution for offences that involve obstructing people or vehicles in a public place, provided the public assembly is held substantially in accordance with parameters that have been provided to or agreed with the Commissioner, expressly stating in proposed Section 21B that the offence of impeding access to a place of worship is subject to the Summary Offences Act 1988 makes it clear the protections that apply to authorised public assemblies also apply to the proposed new offence. Item 2 of Schedule 1 also inserts a provision under the proposed Section 214 capital C. That provision requires the amendments made by this bill to be reviewed to determine whether the policy objectives of the amendments remain valid and whether the terms of the amendments remain appropriate for achieving those objectives. The review is to commence as soon as practicable after 2 years after. The review is to commence as soon as practicable 2 years after the commencement of the amendments, with a report to be tabled in Parliament within 3 years after commencement. The New South Wales Government considers that requiring the review to be undertaken less than 2 years from the commencement would not provide a sufficient period of time to review the operation of these particular amendments. The review will be able to assess things like whether the proximity measure of in or near assists police operationally to ensure the safety of worshippers, and whether the definition of place of worship requires expansion or a different approach. Schedule 2 of the bill amends Section 200 of the Law Enforcement Powers and Responsibilities Act 2002 to provide an exception to the limitation on the use of move-on powers by New South Wales police officers. I'll just refer to that act as LEPRA from here on. Section 197 of LEPRA empowers police officers to give move-on directions to people in public places if they believe on reasonable grounds that, among other things, their behaviour or presence is obstructing another person or traffic or constitutes harassment or intimidation. Failure to comply with such a direction is an offence punishable by a fine of up to $220. Section 200 of the Act places limitations on the exercise of police powers to issue these directions. They cannot be issued at all in relation to industrial disputes, and in relation to other forms of protest or organised assembly, they can only be issued in limited circumstances. These circumstances are where a direction is necessary to address a serious risk to safety, or where the assembly is either unauthorised or is not being held substantially in accordance with the authorisation, and the direction is limited to resolving obstructions of traffic. Schedule 2 will amend Section 200 of LEPRA to include an additional circumstance in which move-on directions can be issued in relation to a protest, where a demonstration, protest, procession or assembly is not an authorised public assembly under the Summary Offences Act 1988, or is not being held substantially in accordance with the authorisation. A police officer will be able to issue a move-on direction if the assembly is occurring in or near a place of worship. The ordinary thresholds for issuing a move-on direction will continue to apply. These proposed amendments will come into force 3 months after the date of assent to this bill or earlier upon proclamation. This will ensure the necessary implementation work and training can be undertaken. Both freedom of religion and the right to protest are integral to a democratic society, and it is important that legislation that impacts either strikes the right balance. In the context of this bill, striking that balance is straightforward. And so, Madam Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.
I call the member for Terrigal to move that this debate be now adjourned.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I move this debate be now adjourned.
The question is that the debate be now adjourned. All of that opinion, please say aye. All those against say no. Carried.
Madam Speaker, I ask that you fix the resumption of this debate as an order of the day for a future day.
I fix the resumption of this debate as an order of the day for a future day. I call the clerk to read the next item of business.
Strata Schemes Legislation Amendment Bill, resumption of the adjourned debate.
And I believe I call the member for Willoughby.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, so it looks like they've read the bills. Let me just make sure. Yep. All right, so I found the links. So let me just pull it up so I can share it with you guys. Okay, so this is number 1. Share this tab. Okay, there we go. Too many tabs open. Just gonna close a few windows. Okay, that's better. All right, so I found it. So there's 1. So Crimes Amendment, Places of Worship Bill 2025. An act to amend the Crimes Act 1900 to provide for offences in relations to persons blocking, impeding, hindering, or taking certain other actions in relation to persons assessing or leaving places of worship, and to amend the Law Enforcement Powers and Responsibilities Act 2002 to authorize police officers to issue move-on directions in relation to apparently genuine demonstrations, protest, processions, and organized assemblies occurring in or near places of worship. So that's that one. And it looks like the bills are now digitally uploaded, so we can go through that another time. Number 2 is this one. Crimes Amendment, Display of Nazi and Terrorist Symbols Bill 2025. An act to amend the same Crimes Act bill to create an offence of knowingly display terrorist organization symbols, to increase the penalties for the offence of knowingly displaying Nazi symbols and for related purposes. And then there's one more. Crimes Legislation Amendment, Racial and Religious Hatred Bill 2025, which is interesting. So they're going to legislate against hatred. You know, one of the natural human emotions, hate. They're going to legislate against it. An act to amend the Crimes Act 1900 in relation to offences about displaying Nazi symbols on or near synagogues, Jewish schools, and the Sydney Jewish Museum, and in relation to Nazi symbol graffiti. So everything with regard, so the display of Nazi symbols anywhere near these 3 prominent locations will be illegal if this bill passes. So what, if people do it somewhere else, it's okay? I'm not saying to do it, I'm just saying, does that what it means? To amend, but you can't display the symbol anywhere anyway. They're just changing it. Yeah. I don't know, man. This is strange territory. Let me finish this. To amend the Crime Sentencing Procedure Act 1999 to provide for matters relating to when unlawful conduct motivated by hate. So that's what I was talking about before. So they have to determine whether you are motivated by hate or prejudice. And that's when you will be given a sentence, or was it 200 penalty units? Up to $22,000. Yeah, because the penalty unit in New South Wales, I just looked it up, was $110. So what, $22,000? And to amend the Graffiti Control Act 2008 to add a circumstance of aggravation in relation to offences committed in relation to graffiti on places of worship. Interesting. Yeah, legislating a specific museum. So the Sydney Jewish Museum, the museum that Anthony Albanese gave $8 million of taxpayer funds a couple of months ago now to refurbish it in response to some of the first attacks that happened. That's why it's the Sydney Jewish Museum specifically. So those are the 3 bills. We'll go through them and we'll see what parts are going to be violations of our rights and what parts are, you know, a bit more inconsequential. As far as a response from New South Wales parliamentarians, I saw John Ruddick respond to my post earlier, so I'll bring that up. So the Libertarian Party opposes further attacks on free speech. In the strongest terms, John Ruddick will be speaking against this bill next week. So I might actually reach out to John Ruddick and see if he wants to speak about this on stream before next week, so that way we can sort of get ahead of it, get ahead of the game. So if John, if you're watching, I'll send you a text anyway. But if you're watching, how about we do a stream so that way we can get ahead of the ball game before next week. But yeah, John Ruddick is actually in the New South Wales Parliament, which is a handy resource for us. So he'll be able to at least speak on the bill in Parliament. And this is just Chris Minns introducing the bill this morning. This was at around 10:30, no, 12:10, yeah. So I posted that already. So the bill has now been introduced. Debate has been adjourned until a later date. I'll see when they adjourn it to, and I'll follow the process just like all the other pieces of legislation. I need to get my head around the process with regards to state parliament, because I've been so focused on federal parliament. The process is very similar. It's just I got to get my head around the Legislative Assembly, Legislative Council process. So at the moment, it's in the Legislative Assembly. And I saw a couple of questions. Anything in particular? Where's John Ruddick? John Ruddick's probably at Parliament because Parliament just resumed today in New South Wales. So it's probably in the Sydney city at the moment. He works his ass off, man. He does work hard for a parliamentarian. He definitely grinds it out, which is good. But I'll hit him up and I'll see if he wants to share some thoughts on how we can tackle this. As for RV, I did see the video. If anyone wants to screen record this and send this to RV. So I'll give you 5 seconds to screen record this. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So I saw the video that RV uploaded. Hilarious video. Thanks for the free promo. The online influencer with a small following appreciates you sharing my page to your hundreds of thousands of followers on the Rebel News Network. Thank you so much for that. I couldn't find one comment out of the, couple of dozen comments that you get on your pages. Looks like you're struggling to get some engagement, but I couldn't find one comment from people supporting you, endorsing you, condemning me, condemning the fact that I spoke to Joel. Could not find one comment. If you find a comment, please send it to me on X in the DMs or leave a comment below in my response. It's the pinned post because, sorry, I pinned my Sky News interview. I'm sorry. So I've pinned your video. I know it's struggling to get views, so I'm going to give it some views. This Lebanese Australian activist appreciates it. And as for a question for everyone that's watching, ask RV in return why he hasn't spoken about the hate speech laws that have been passing in Australia at the state and federal level over the last few months. Just ask him that. That's all you got to do. Ask him that. And I'll give you the answer. The Jewish community are endorsing, submitting, funding, and encouraging the government to pass these bills. That's the answer. But ask him anyway. Ask him why the Lebanese activist is doing more for Australians than Avi. That's it. Anyway, I'll follow the bill. We'll keep you guys up to date. And thank you, Memology, man. Thank you for the gifted membership. I don't know if anyone gets a Sunshine RB got it by the looks of it. Thanks for the membership share. Appreciate it. And like I said, I'll keep you guys up to date like I always do. You're not going to get updated on the bill from Avi, so don't worry about Avi. He's not going to help you. He's just going to spread Jewish rebel news propaganda. And the clip, I edited the part where he tries to promote his merch. Don't buy Rebel News merch. Buy Australians versus the Agenda merch. Okay. Unlike Avi, the money will actually stay in the Australian economy. Go to australiansversustheagenda.com.au. The link is also just on the bottom of the screen there. It's abbreviated, but it will take you to the same link. Buy Australians versus the Agenda merch. Don't buy Rebel News merch. And the money will stay in the Australian economy because Avi will send it overseas. And you know where he'll send it. All right, I'll keep you guys updated. Thank you so much. And I'll try to get John Ruddick on the stream so he can talk about the bill from a parliamentarian's point of view, because he's actually a sitting member in the New South Wales Parliament. So I'll reach out to him shortly. We'll try to get the ball rolling on that. And I'll keep you guys updated because the anti-vilification laws will be passing, or they'll attempt to pass it in Victoria. They're going to try to pass these bills in New South Wales. If they get the two big states to sign on to this shit, then you know, everyone else will just follow. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I just want to keep it short and sweet. It's only 42 minutes. My mic is working, Avi, yeah? All good? It's working? Okay, sweet. You know, every stream that you do, by the way, you have a technical issue all the time. And what do? You blame Rukshan, or you blame the other H-1B visa employee that you have on your team. Littered with hypocrisy, this guy. I can't deal with it. I just can't. Anyway, have a good afternoon, guys. It's Tuesday afternoon. Have a good rest of your day. New South Wales Parliament has now tabled crimes amendments to punish people for the display of Nazi symbols, interrupting places of worship, specifically synagogue, and they've amended the Graffiti Act to criminalize unlawful conduct that's motivated by hate or prejudice at certain locations, Sydney Jewish Museum, Jewish schools, synagogues, and it's already against the law elsewhere, just to clarify that. Yeah, that's it. Have a good day, guys. Take care.